take a look at the new iPhone.
The shiny new iPhone 14 lineup is here. Apple unveiled 4 new phones: the iPhone 14, 14 Plus, 14 Pro, and 14 Pro Max. Between that new Plus model for the base iPhone 14 and the dynamic island notch on the 14 Pros, this revamped lineup gives us a lot to unpack. First, we'll compare the base iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, then the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, and finally, we'll compare the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro. Chapters are enabled, so feel free to skip around. Let's break down the specs of each phone and how they compare. Now, keep in mind that these are just the on-paper specs, so be sure to subscribe to CNET to see our full reviews of these iPhones in the coming weeks. That being said, let's start by going over the first new iPhone duo Apple announced, the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus. The iPhone 14 has a 6.1-inch display, and instead of offering a mini model like they did for the iPhone 12 and 13 series, Apple has introduced the iPhone 14 Plus. This phone has a bigger 6.7-inch display, which, spoiler alert, is the same size as the iPhone 14 Pro Max. That bigger screen also carries a heftier price tag. While the iPhone 14 starts at $799, the 14 Plus starts at $899. The iPhone 14 goes on sale on September 16th, and the 14 Plus goes on sale on October 7th. But beyond those size and price differences, the 14 and 14 Plus are pretty similar. They come in 128, 256, and 512 GB storage options. And they both have a new emergency SOS via satellite feature that's made to connect you to emergency personnel in the event you don't have access to traditional cellular and Wi-Fi service. There's also another new feature called crash detection, which uses sensors to detect whether there's been a crash and automatically alerts emergency services. While Apple doesn't specify battery capacity, they claim the 14 Plus has the, quote, best battery life ever with up to 26 hours of video playback. And they say the 14 offers up to 20 hours of video playback. You know we'll be sure to test those claims in our review. The 14 and 14 Plus are powered by the A15 Bionic chip that was introduced with the iPhone 13 series. And as for the cameras, both phones feature a dual 12-megapixel camera system. There's a main lens with an aperture of f1.5 and an ultra-wide lens with an aperture of f2.4. Apple claims this updated main camera, along with a new processing technology called Photonic Engine, leads to improved low-light photos. And both phones have a 2x optical zoom range. The 14 and 14 Plus now have 4K cinematic mode, aka portrait mode for video, and a new action mode that stabilizes your video as you record. And both front cameras now have autofocus capability. Finally, say goodbye to the physical SIM card. The iPhone 14 and 14 Plus exclusively use eSIM. Next, let's go over the other duo Apple announced, the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. The 6.1-inch 14 Pro starts at $999, and the 6.7-inch 14 Pro Max starts at $1,099. They go on sale on September 16th, and they come in 4 storage options: 128, 256, and 512 GB, as well as 1 TB. And both phones bring some exciting changes. First, if you're planning on getting one of these models, be prepared to say goodbye to that rectangular notch. The 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max feature a new notch that can expand to share alerts and other activity. It's called Dynamic Island. Second, the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max have an always-on display that'll keep the time and a dimmed background visible even when the phone is idle. You Apple Watch and Android users are likely familiar with this feature. These phones also have the new emergency SOS via satellite and crash detection features found on the 14 and 14 Plus. Apple claims these phones have an all-day battery life, with the 14 Pro offering up to 23 hours of video playback and the 14 Pro Max offering up to 29 hours. And the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max are powered by a brand new A16 Bionic chip. When it comes to cameras, both phones feature an updated 3-camera system and an improved sensor. There's a 48-megapixel main camera with an f1.78 aperture, and there is a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera with an f2.2 aperture that Apple says leads to better macro shots. And then there is a 12-megapixel telephoto lens with an f2.8 aperture that Apple claims leads to improved low-light photos. Both phones have a 6x optical zoom range. The 14 and 14 Pro Max also have 4K cinematic mode for video and that new stabilizing action mode, and they also have the ability to shoot macro and ProRes video. And those front cameras also have autofocus. Lastly, you'll have to say goodbye to your physical SIM card with the Pro models as well, as they also use an eSIM. All right, now that we've gone over both the Pro and non-Pro sides of the iPhone 14 lineup, you may be wondering, what are the main differences between the 14s and the 14 Pros? First and foremost, there is a price difference. As I mentioned earlier, the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus start at $799 and $899 respectively, while the 14 Pro starts at $999, and that 14 Pro Max starts at $1,099. And there's a storage difference too. The 14 and 14 Plus come in 128, 256, and 512 gigabyte options, while that 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max also have a terabyte option. So what do you get for that higher price tag? The 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max have the improved A16 Bionic chip rather than last year's A15 processor. That new A16 Bionic chip powers the most distinctive features of the iPhone 14 Pro lineup, like the dynamic island notch and the always-on display. That chip also powers the improved camera system on the Pro models, which includes 3 lenses rather than 2, a greater optical zoom range, and the ability to shoot macro and ProRes video. The 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max also have greater video playback time, and they have ProMotion, which gives them a higher refresh rate. And I almost forgot this last, very important difference: colors. The 14 and 14 Plus come in blue, purple, midnight, starlight, and product red, while the 14 Pro and Pro Max come in deep purple, gold, silver, and space black. The Pro models are made of surgical grade stainless steel, while the non-Pro models are made of aerospace grade aluminum. What do you think of the iPhone 14 lineup? Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe to CNET to see all the reviews, tests, and other coverage on these latest iPhones.